Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Data Ideas podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brandi Beals, and with me is my co-host, Dustin Schimek.
Hey, everyone.
And today, I'm really excited to be joined by Chris Williams, who is the founder and CTO of Precision Analytics Group. Chris has over 27 years of experience in designing, leading, and implementing full lifecycle business analytics and predictive analytics. He's also an Alteryx ace and Tableau ambassador. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you both for the opportunity to speak with everybody today. Data really is my life. I never thought I'd get to this point in my career. I'd always hoped I would. And there's so much more to do. So I'm just really happy to be here and talk to the audience and talk to you both.
Awesome. Well, I love the title that you're using here on the live stream, Data Geek Extraordinaire, really leaning into all things data. Love that. One of the things we always love to talk about is just career paths and journeys, and you have an exceptional one with 27 years. And I know in some of the previous calls we've had, we've talked about your evolution in the different tool sets that you use. Was just hoping that maybe we could start by telling us more about your background and how you got into the data field generally.
Yeah, so I have an extraordinary journey, hence the Data Geek Extraordinaire title. I figured that was appropriate. So I've been in the industry for about 27, almost 28 years now. I was a Russian major and a psychology minor at the University of Virginia. So it was kind of wild. And people are like, what? How do you get here? I was really good with foreign languages, still am. Because the discipline to learn foreign languages is similar to the discipline to learning computer languages for me. So, at the time, I was really good with 4 or 5 different languages. And I always, in my family, we were always computer-based. So my dad taught me, basic, we had Visual Basic, and he would teach me things on the side. So I always knew that computers would be something that I could always do. I just wanted to get that other exposure to help me be a little bit more well-rounded. So when I got out of college, I was able to go into working for a company called Circuit City, which is not with us anymore, but you still see parts of it in CarMax because that was developed by Circuit City. I was doing COBOL, RPG, and CL to deal with the Y2K issue. So yes, I am dating myself with the Y2K. And yes, we are still here after the Y2K issues with the 2-digit date. But learning COBOL and RPG, which I didn't know, the discipline that I've learned with languages, came into play. So I took that discipline and really, I still use it to this day with things that I am trying to learn. So, before, we have, I started, did take a C++ class when I was in college. And then, RPG, COBOL, C, CL, and then I knew some Visual Basic as well. And then, fast forward, 30 years almost, I'm still using the same discipline when I'm learning, Python and R, which are things that you would definitely want to be knowledgeable on when you're getting into, different types of analytics. So you have, maybe some predictive analytics that you want to go ahead and do. Maybe you want to build a predictive model, things like that. That's where you kind of want to understand, what your options are. So as I learn my, try to figure out what I'm going to do, I always focus on the concepts first. Languages are just tools to execute once you know what you have to do. So if you know the concepts of predictive analytics or what it is that you really want to do in English terms, you create a workflow, no pun intended for the Alteryx folks out there. We're going to get to that. But if you create a workflow of what it is that you need to do, what questions you need to answer, what your destination needs to be, then you can it's literally just putting together a puzzle without having to understand the tool set specifically. You want to understand the tools, obviously, but you want to understand what you have to do first before you get to tools involved. Otherwise, you're just wasting time, potentially wasting money on budget, and then your career could, it could take a little bit to get to where you need to go. So you want to be efficient in that way. So that's sort of a quick synopsis of the evolution of some of the, from COBOL to Python and everything in between.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that you tie it back to languages, because I actually, when I was first programming, I, kind of felt the same way. I mean, languages, whether it's, spoken or programming languages, they all have a syntax, right? And multiple languages can be similar to one another. Spanish and Italian are, if you know Spanish, like you can translate a lot of that into Italian with like a different, type of syntax. And the same is true for programming languages. So I kind of love that you called that out. Yeah, so I just think that that's really, really fascinating. You talk about some of these initial languages that you use and some of these newer technologies that you're using as well. I loved too that you kind of you talk about kind of needing to map out the problem first. And like, I guess I'm curious, like, how do you do that? Like, do you particularly like take a step away from the computer and you're like not even hands on the keyboard right away, but you just kind of like, whether it's whiteboard or something, a problem before you dive in, so you dive in with purpose? Or do you do the hands on the keyboard stuff kind of, is it more of a mental map and you're immediately hands on the keyboard?
So let me answer this question, and I'll jump back to something that you said about the languages. What I generally do is I'll literally hands off keyboard and try to understand what it is what is the point? What are we doing? What are the requirements? What are the implied requirements? And try to figure out what I need to do. Unless it's saying, hey, I need to develop a Tableau dashboard that does this, then at that point, I kind of may go to the keyboard a little bit faster just because it's very specific. I need a Tableau dashboard that does X, Y, Z using this data source. If that's the case, then that's fine. Then it's a little bit quicker to the keyboard, but I still go off of, say, for example, I may use Miro instead of going straight into Tableau desktop or, Tableau online, depending on what it is that you really want to use, or what do you have access to, I guess I should say. But, if you want to design something so that you actually have a purpose on what it is that you're doing. And so for me, what works out, I'm very old school. Sometimes I'll even get a pad and paper and pencil and just draw something out, just so that I have that mentality to go ahead and say, hey, okay, let me draw this out. Let me put this in a frame. And then if I'm at the point where I'm putting it into a frame, then I will go into Miro. Mural. There are a couple of other tools that really are really great for creating wireframes. I think Miro initially first, because that's what I, pretty much like rely on when it goes to something like that. But yeah, I generally want to have a very high level of what is being asked of me first, because I want to make sure that there's a clear understanding that we're on the same page. That's something that needs to happen. The tool becomes very, I don't want to say inconsequential, but it becomes less important when you understand what the concepts of what you're supposed to produce are. So I will write everything out, and it helps me understand to ensure that I know what I'm, supposed to be doing for you. So the last thing you want to do is waste money and or be wrong when you develop something. So I tend to go very by the book when it comes to something like that, making sure and I understand. Once that part is done, then it's up to me to assess, what tool is the best, or if I don't have a choice, then I go ahead and break it down from a technical standpoint. That, sometimes you really can't skip that step when you're doing things. just because if you skip that step, you're making an assumption that could potentially burn you down the road if you're not correct. So that's how I address, I always do things here, the 30,000 foot view, then I get into the 5,000 foot view. And then you just, literally roll up your sleeves and get into the technical aspects, because you start here, you may be successful. It just may be cyclical, because you're going to have to do things over because you didn't look at it at a higher level. There's nothing wrong with doing things in a cyclical manner if you've understood the high level first, because that's just software development. And that's just dashboard development or report development, because you've got to get all the details ironed out. So, but jumping back to something that you said, I used to be a Windows administrator in 6 different languages. So having that, you're right, Italian, English, Spanish, German, French, which is actually my worst foreign language, and then Portuguese. So I was a Windows admin in those languages. And then I also did Oracle database administration in those languages as well when I was doing some overseas work. So that really kept me on my toes. Just because if I forget how to say something in one language, I'll slip into another. And so, but you will get the answer at some point.
That's great.
I just one thing to chime in on, Brandi and Chris. I love the approach of thinking about what the high level objective is, and then going down to the few thousand foot view, getting hands on keyboard and actually starting to build out a solution that works towards achieving that high level objective. I'm curious if you have any advice for, so we're broadcasting this to our Data Career Summit group as well, and there's a lot of folks that are kind of entry-level analysts or looking to get that first job, or perhaps transitioning into an analyst role. And, they probably have, many of them have probably been taking courses on kind of the technical skills. So very technical skill focused coursework. And I'm curious if you have any advice to them from your experience, like once they get into that first role, and they kind of start to be tasked with things. Are there tactics or questions that you ask that you would recommend kind of they think about asking stakeholders to help get at what that high level objective is? Because sometimes I think stakeholders don't always articulate that, or even have thought about that themselves. And so curious what tactics you've used to maybe draw that out of folks that you're working with. And yeah, what advice would you have for folks that are just kind of getting started with that, might be a little bit reluctant to kind of dig into that?
I think the thing that I would say first, and this is how I mentor, if you understand the concepts of analytics and development in analytics, you very rarely will be without an opportunity to get a job. Sometimes people will go focus on certain tools like, learn Alteryx or learn Power BI or learn Tableau and so forth. That's fine. But if you don't know the concepts of how to develop a dashboard or how to develop an Alteryx workflow, why you're doing something, that becomes much harder. Then you turn more into a robot. What I mean by that is that you'll need somebody to basically write a script for you to do something, because you're not understanding. It'll take you longer to understand the why you're doing something, not that you're doing something, if that makes sense. So I try to, everybody wants to get a job. I'm one of those people too. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. Trying to find work is always hard. What makes you stand out from somebody else? That's the main question that people ask. And I ask myself that, what makes me stand out from some other, company that does this? What I try to do is just make sure that I know how to answer a use case and I know how to address a use case. And when I did some work at some datathons, and you have a lot of rising students or just people wanting to get into the data industry. Understanding the concepts is paramount, because you can always shift gears with the tool. There's always a new kid on the block, or there's always a tool that is a mainstay. If you understand why you want to use a tool, learning the tool becomes a hell of a lot easier because, you can use Tableau. Like I want to develop a dashboard. Okay, so you can narrow it down. I can use Power BI, you can use a you can use Tableau, you can use a couple of other newer tools. If you just want to develop reports, you may have some BI work that can be, BI tools that can be helpful. I got into industry using Cognos. I'm an old cognoid. It's still here. I'm very surprised about that, but I'm also very happy about that just because there are a lot of things that Cognos can do that a lot of these other dashboarding tools can't. So you never know when something's going to be around for a while or something is going to go by the way of the dodo bird, so to speak, and get extinct and get eliminated from the competition. So, but yeah, if you a lot of people say if you know languages, you're going to get a job. If you know this, you're going to get a job. Yes and no. What you want to do is present yourself in a way that shows you that you understand how to solve a use case. That's the most important, because I can say, hey, I know R really well, but if you can't apply it to the data analytics scene and solving a problem for an organization, for a school, for the government, or whoever you're working for, that's something you're going to have to do. So being able to show that discipline to understand how you can answer a problem is how I would go about doing that. And then presenting your resume in the way, your cover letter, these are all standard, like get a job type of things. But what I would do is just like in your cover letter, maybe explain how you were able to solve a problem or using a tool or using, your analytic mind to try to figure out what's happening.
I think I love that advice. I mean, I think tools are obviously such a critical component to the work that we do, but being able to apply that in a way that's meaningful for a business is really what takes it that step farther. So absolutely love that. We've kind of talked a little bit about some of the older technologies that you kind of started your career with. And you have evolved over time, right, over your career to using, those new technologies, the new kid on the block type of technologies, right? Always staying up to date with the field. And not only just staying up to date, but you are an Alteryx ace and a Tableau ambassador. So not just staying up to date, but mastering both of these newer technologies.
It's incredible. I told Brandi I had never met, so I didn't know that someone existed that was both of those things. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah. And we're kind of curious, like, how do you accomplish that? Like, what does it take to become get these two recognitions?
We're curious and in awe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. It's hard because I look at this and I'm just like, well, dang, this is crazy. Because I've been doing Alteryx for almost 7 years, and there's still a hell of a lot for me to know within Alteryx and I'm learning every day with it. With Tableau, I've been working with Tableau for about a decade. I've been focusing more on the server side with Tableau, as well as, more front end with Alteryx. I'm more of a server person, but getting myself out of the basement is important to understand what happens in the front end. How did I get to both of these? I just worked really hard to understand why I would use Alteryx and why I would use Tableau. And then, I have assignments that would force me to make me uncomfortable. And you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I can sit here and say, I'm an Alteryx ace, and this is when I was, nominated, I was just totally like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And so I've worked exceptionally hard to try to understand the tool, understand what could be asked of me, how to apply all these things. And it's a learning process. It's a process that will continue to learn. Same with Tableau. I love using Tableau. Um, I was thrown into the server world and said, here, I was told, here, you go learn this. And yes, you're going to be our server administrator. And yes, you're going to teach somebody else. And so that was just a lot of time of just really, pretty much in what I call the laboratory, trying to break stuff to understand what each thing does. That's how I learn, because you're going to encounter, not everything is rainbow and unicorns, especially when you're dealing with data, because data is not clean. And so patience is important. Professional patience is important, because you're going to be dealing with data that, it's not a training set. You have no idea what kind of things you're going to see in the data, which makes being an analytics, I'll use, sometimes I'll use Tableau Prep if I need to be in the Tableau world to go ahead. So I need to understand how to use Tableau Prep. That requires me to go do things that I might normally do in Alteryx and try to do it in Tableau Prep, so that I understand the methodology and how I would go solve a problem. Conversely, I may need to do something in Alteryx that I would normally turn to a Tableau or Power BI or something, dashboarding tool to do. Using Alteryx reporting tools to really understand how to build something in the interactive tools, to build something and have it send out to an output, is something that I need to understand how to do. So I learn, and I keep trying to put myself in a position where I can learn. And sometimes the best way for me to learn, and it's not really at the expense of a client or anything, is to self-inflict an uncomfortable position. Just put myself in like, okay, you need to do this only using these. Go solve the problem. And sometimes it may be looked upon as, having your arm twisted, but those kind of experiences will make you, A, never forget, and B, it will make you professionally stronger and mentally stronger, because there are going to be times in which you don't have a choice on what technology you're going to be using. The customer has this, you're going to use this, and that's how the world is going to be. So you're in a box. You just need to be able to perform inside that box sometimes.
Yeah.
I love sorry, didn't mean to. I was just going to say, I love the idea of having comfort with being uncomfortable. This has been a big thing for me in my career. I started out as this person that never spoke up. Like if I go back like 11 or 12 years ago, I was afraid to even speak in meetings. I was afraid to share my work. And, folks say to me like, oh, like, Dustin, like, you've got this podcast and you do these speaking engagements, and, like they will talk about me like I'm this, speaker that they're not. And I'm like, no, that's not true at all. Like, actually, you probably at this point in your career stage are speaking more than I was. Honestly, it was just a matter of not being, just saying yes to things. And I also, on the technology side of things, I think of an instance where I actually had a Tableau dashboard that was going to be super critical for the company. Like, we had invested a lot into this, not only the dashboard, but like just the initiatives around it. And we actually brought in some experts in data visualization to sit down in a room with me and walk through it and give feedback on it. And that resulted in almost total transformation of this dashboard before we published it out. It ended up being one of the best dashboards in terms of utilization and impact that I've ever put out. But, it was really hard to sit and, get better and go through the fire, and get feedback from other experts and stuff. But again, it was just kind of like having the willingness to do that is what in the end made this work that I had be way better, So I love that concept. I'm curious if you have any like tips for folks just on how to like find that kind of courage and willingness, to like go out there and be okay with being uncomfortable.
It just, and I do this myself daily. There's a ton of stuff I don't know. And I want to know. And I'm okay not knowing the fact that I have the discipline that I'm going to know. And so, when I try to go with that out there, you just want to have an open mind. And you want to have an open mind, understanding that there may be another way to do something. So, we talk about being an Alteryx ace. One of my biggest mentors and greatest friends too, Joshua Burkow, he always says to me when I was just getting started in Alteryx, you want to have 3 ways of doing something. So 3 ways of doing something before you proceed on to learning something else so that you're never stuck. It applies really well when you're learning Alteryx. It also applies when you're dealing with Tableau or anything. And I've really taken that to heart because I just look at it and say 3 ways of doing something is important because sometimes 2 of those ways are going to be taken away. And so if I can learn in any way from anybody, and learning is not necessarily learning from someone who's like head and shoulders above you. You can learn from someone who's just rolling into the world. I also have done some teaching in my career. I have taught some for Alteryx. I've taught some just to my clients. And just understanding how each people process your learning, or how they're learning, or what they think. I learn from people every day. And I try to be a sponge because I am not omniscient. That's fine. I don't need to be omniscient. What I do want to be is I want to be able to learn something every day. The day I stop learning is the day I really need to stop that thing. Because I either need to really open my head, take a time out, but learning is important. Otherwise, we're going to be constantly growing in this. And the analytics scene changes so much. You have to be adaptable. And that's the one, you have to be professionally adaptable, and you have to be open to being that. So speaking with Brandi, I've learned so much from Brandi, just listening to her talk. She's come to my Portland Tableau user group and spoken, just in chats off camera. I've learned so much. Dustin, our learning process is just getting started. It's an honor to call you a colleague and a friend as well.
Likewise.
So I plan to learn a production to really, learn something from somebody, a simple conversation, or just watching someone present, or just anything. It's so critical to just be able to hop from one thing to another. So when I got into my career, I started as an object-oriented programmer, doing C++. Then I mutated to going into the back end and learning a lot on Unix. So I lived on the Unix side for about a decade and a half. And I still do some Unix, but it's a lot of things are not Unix based anymore, which is unfortunate to me, because from a server aspect, I really love the Unix platform, just because I can tune the server much better on Unix than say on the Windows side. I just say, hey, let's make this thing a super machine and tell it to go mind its own business, and I'll send it to world. And then it'll just, and everything is just fine. And then, so the systems engineer side, the reason why I did that is because I wanted to understand how server world works, and then how to build a server properly based off of the load of whatever it is. So, I've done a lot of Tableau. Hey, what are my longest running dashboards? What do I want to do? How do I want to tune Tableau server? Where do I want to put it? How do I want to distribute that? I need to understand the process in which a request happens to how an end user sees it on his or her dashboard or their dashboard. So yeah, that's important. And so same with Alteryx workflow or app or whatever you have on Alteryx server. I need to know which ones take the longest. So if I need to distribute my server, installation, I can go ahead and do that. And what are some long running ones? Maybe I want to schedule it. I need to understand part of the reasons why I started the programming to the server, which is more of a systems engineer, and I can understand the hardware that comes into it, VMs and all that fun stuff now. And then now doing like front end stuff, I never wanted to not know what was happening in the full process of doing something. And that was one of the things that was very important to me. And that was by design for me, for my career. I just wanted to understand each process. I wanted to be able to develop something and then explain to someone who may not, high levels, C levels, they're not going to care about how many cores you have on the server. They just want to click something and have it show up within 10 to 15 seconds before they lose interest. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just kind of like when you're working with the dashboard, once you get that past 15 seconds, people start wandering, they start getting their coffee, they start looking at Amazon, they start doing everything else except what you want them to do is just focus on what you produce for them. Yeah. So, and truly understanding that, you need to understand what takes long and what is the, how do we fix that? How do we make a delta that it decreases that time, right? Yeah. So that kind of, being an ace, I have an Alteryx user group here with one of my good friends and colleagues, Deborah Diesel, down here in Orange County. So we run the Alteryx user group down here in Orange County. And even though I live in Orange County, I still run the Portland Tableau user group because those are my good friends up there with, Danny and Emily and, May up there in Portland, and they're great people. So being a Tableau ambassador and being is a real honor. I want to do more Tableau this year. Mm-hmm. So Brandi, I may be hitting you up for some Tableau stuff because you are probably one of the shiniest stars in the Tableau. I love your work. It's so wonderful. But being both of them, I never really thought about it until someone really pointed it out of being an ace and a Tableau ambassador. I don't think of along those lines of I need to rack up accolades or anything. I'm just honestly, it's the biggest honor is being thought of as like a person who can do good things in both worlds. That helps business-wise for me, being a small business, but it helps me personally because I look at that as one of the, being respected by your peers is the greatest accolade I feel like I can get in a professional environment. I don't need the pomp and circumstance. I don't need the fireworks and the balloons and all that, all those shenanigans, right? But being able to call on somebody who's in your industry and they have respect for you, you have respect for them, and to say, thank you, that keeps me going. When things are, when you own a business, things can get high, things can get low. It's not all, happy-go-lucky, but, having the respect of your peers, and then I respect the hell out of so many people that I am connected with. I can honestly say the data industry has some of the smartest people in the world. And don't sleep on the data industry, people. And if you're just getting started in this, you're part of that too. So, I mean, don't ever, if you're just getting involved in the data industry, you are part of this. You're the reason why this gets better. Yeah. You may think about it as like, I'm only in day 30 or day 2 or something of the data industry. That doesn't matter.
We all start on day 2,
We all start I start on day 1. I'm no different than anybody else that I put my clothes on the same way as you do. We all have thoughts and we have feelings, we have anxieties, we have confidence, and, we all persevere. Mm-hmm. Something that you just have to do. And find someone who will walk that path with you and, go forth. Don't be afraid because nobody in here is looking to push you down.
Right.
That's the one thing in this industry I've learned. No one here is looking to push you down. They need you.
Yeah.
I love that. I totally agree with you, Chris, on that. And that's something that I've told folks that might be a little apprehensive sometimes about like sharing their work, whether it's within an organization or even within the community or at a conference or whatever. I'll say, honestly, number one thing that I've observed is after someone shares their work in our field, people are appreciative of their willingness to do it, and the fact that they were given an opportunity to learn from someone else, from a peer in the industry. And it's, things don't have to be perfect, polished, of course we want to do correct work and everything, but like, it's not like, I don't want to like characterize other industries or anything, but like, I think sometimes there's this feeling like you have to be perfect to go present something. And I don't think that's the case in this field. Like, I feel like everything we're working on together is like kind of a living, breathing collective body of work. And I'd love that aspect of it.
One of my, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
One of my favorite quotes or mantras lately has been progress is better than perfection. Like,
right. Yep.
Data, technology, it's always evolving. And so it's not really like about being a master of every domain or, being perfect in your execution, but just about, continuous improvement and just, making progress. And, that data community, it really is a community. And I think we all lift each other up, and it's quite magical. And I think a lot of that is due to Chris's hard work and the various user groups and communities and relationship building that he does. So I absolutely love that. And actually, Chris, so you mentioned, leading the Alteryx user group, leading the Tableau user groups, in addition to being an ambassador and an ace and all of these wonderful things. So you've played many roles, one of which is a community leader. And you kind of just briefly talked too about your time as a system administrator, right? And I think a lot of times in my experience, people think of Tableau as Tableau Desktop, the tool where you build the dashboards, or Alteryx and Alteryx Designer, the tool where you build your workflows. But each of these technologies, and probably many others, have a server component. And that server component takes what individual developers are doing and kind of allows them to scale up, whether that's, automate their workflows or, send their dashboards out to people who don't develop in Tableau. And those administrators are also, they play a really critical role. And I feel like maybe gets a little less love than the people who are building really fancy visualizations. And I think we need all of these people, right? And so I'm curious, like, as you, have this plethora of experience in your role as a community leader, how do you help people who are maybe getting into the data field or are already there really understand the various roles that they could play? Because, it's not one size fits all type of thing, right? There's many different specialties that you can have.
Yeah, there are. And the thing that you probably want to talk that I tend to talk about is they're literally, I mean, I might blog on this probably soon, but how I look at it is that there are several aspects of analytics. Are you looking at the very beginning when you're doing data acquisition? Because if you think about data acquisition, that's really the most important part. And the reason why it's most important is because you're responsible for what actually is going into your repository. So the part of, hey, do we have this data item to answer these use cases or these analytical questions? Well, if you're in the acquisition phase, then you're responsible for trying to find a means to determine, do we already have this data? And it's just not inside our repository. And then, hey, do we need to go get it? How long is it going to take to go get it? And then you have data governance, and then data acquisition and data governance. That's all part of analytics. People don't really think about it that way. They kind of put governance in its own category, but no, it's really important, because if you're doing the data acquisition, the governance is really, really important to figure out what your organizational requirements are. And then trying to make sure you adhere to that. I'm seeing more of that getting embraced by analytics as a whole, because it really is. And I don't like the fact that it sometimes gets sectionalized outside of analytics, because it's not. It's really important. So you have the acquisition, then you have the blending and the cleansing, which I tend to use for Alteryx for, and amongst other things. Alteryx is just not a data cleansing tool. I use it to do reports. I use it to do predictive analytics. I use it to create apps, automate these processes, and so forth. And then you have the reporting, which is pretty cool because the reporting actually is there. And then I kind of slide something else. It's like, are we going to be doing predicting? So are we building predictive models? So you have 4 different areas. And you just, when I talk to people who want to get into the industry, I just have a simple conversation to understand where their desires are. And then you can really slot yourself in, at least to get started, in a certain category based off of what really drew them into the room. And then, tying all that back, the server pieces. So I grew up pretty professionally doing Cognos Server. I've done Cognos Server my entire career. And so, and it's still here. I still have clients that use it religiously. But and I think Cognos Server is probably one of the most complex servers applications you'll find in BI. So that discipline of understanding how things work, because that's what server administration is really. How do things work? How do you want them to work? Why aren't they working? And, what can I do to make them work better? Tableau is, you basically want a server application to make your front end operate faster. Same with Tableau, same with Alteryx. All those, that's the common denominator amongst all these. Good server administrator doesn't have his, her, or their name said in a high level of meeting, because that generally means they're a little pissed because something's not working properly. But as far as not getting the accolades from the only time, I mean, when I'm a server admin, I want just things to work, and they don't need to know my name, just that I'm a server admin. That's it. Just because if they really understand everything, what I'm, about me, I tend to think that maybe I should be doing something better, and that just might be my apprehension. But about being a server, because a server is a 24/7 type of thing, depending on the organization you're working for and what your coverage is supposed to be. That's why I work extra hard to understand the ins and outs and how to fix something that might be broken. Because there are going to be times in which you get that call. Why isn't this working? Or this process is late. Why is this late? We have data we have to show. You better have some answers. And so the way you get those answers in some cases is your test environment, if you're fortunate to have one, test environment to go test some things. But getting on the server aspect of things, if you understand systems and how systems work, and you're not necessarily interested in dealing with a lot of front end stuff, the server place is probably the best for you. And that is a job that is epically important. You just want to know how things work, and you need to have a solution for why things don't work, or how to make things better. You can always, show people why something's not working, and let that be a decision for the higher ups to make on what they should do to fix it. But sometimes I don't know is an okay answer, but there are times in which you say, I don't know, but I want to try this. When you don't know something, I would definitely admit that there's something that's unknown, but I would also, in that same breath or that same, conversation, say, but I want to try this and this and this and this. So if you don't know something, offer a couple solutions that you can try in place to give yourself some time to figure out what that is. That's just more of a general professional sense. That'll prevent you from losing professional trust with your client, and it'll give you some time to actually figure out what's happening. And then you'll figure it out. Take a deep breath, slow everything down. And that's one thing that I would say is anybody who's getting into it or anybody who's in it, if you're faced with something that you surely don't know, and you're just kind of like, oh no, this is the worst possible scenario, take a deep breath. First part of solving a problem is admitting what the problem is, or if you don't know what it is, then you go find it. I mean, you research. That's all. That's the best way to go do it. So there's a place for everything. It's a place for everybody in this. If you're a server person, if you're a system person, go on the server side. Data acquisition, you like doing surveys, do data acquisition. If you like doing reporting, do the reporting. If you like doing the blending and the data cleansing to create data warehouses and reporting databases, there's a place for you for that too.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that you talk about the fact that I don't know is a reasonable answer. And two, I mean, things are bound to break. That's inevitable. So it's not about necessarily, I mean, where we can avoid, breakdowns is obviously critical, but when they do happen, being able to manage them throughout that time, I think is also really important. But we are almost at the end here. We've been talking for 45 minutes. It's been a quick 45 minutes this morning. And I think if you're up for it, Chris, we'd love to do some rapid fire questions and then talk a little bit more about where people can learn more about you.
Yeah, let's get it.
All right.
All right. So I'll take the first one. So Chris, you've been inspiring us. You're inspiring, no doubt, others that are either watching this on the Data Career Summit YouTube channel or listening to the podcast recording later. What inspires you? Who inspires you? Where does Chris get inspiration from?
So I draw inspiration from my family, my parents. I draw inspiration from my mentors and people who I mentor, to be perfectly honest. I draw inspiration from a lot of different people because I see a lot of different people and I see how hard they work. I work, my parents both have businesses in their career. I inspire to learn from them just when I feel like I can't do anymore. When I feel like I've been beaten down, I take a page from their book and understand what they fought through and to continue the fight.
Love that. How do you follow up that answer?
You can follow it however you want. You can go. I mean, I can tell you more. It's just, I think as you get into this world and you have people around you, you have your circles. You watch how people work. When you feel like you just don't have enough anymore, I watch what other people do. And then I watch them succeed. And I said, that could be me.
Yeah.
If I just do a little more.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's not necessarily a competition, but being able to see how other people are doing things and pulling inspiration from that is phenomenal. And it can come from anybody, not just people in the data space. One of the things that I do, I don't know if you know this, but I lead the Data Book Club, and every season we run a new season of the book club. And we just started voting on the next book. I just posted a message yesterday, and I'm curious whether you like to read, and if so, what you're reading right now.
Well, Joshua Burkout just came out with his Alteryx book. So I've been like, I want to get it. I'm just like looking at that. There are things that I read all the time. Like right now, I'm actually reading a Tableau desktop cookbook. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I just want to make sure that I don't get rusty on the front end stuff. And there are a couple of other competing on analytics. Had a book that was given to me. These are things that, I tend to read books that sometimes focus on tools because I want to make sure that I don't get rusty. But also it helps me reinforce or learn something from just reading something. So I try to read, I'm a geek in the sense I don't read a lot of fiction. You won't find a lot of that around me. I mean, if I'm not reading a computer book, I do like reading books on battles, like history, like Civil War and the War of 1812. I can sit and talk to you about those all day long. But I try, and then obviously nature. I read a lot on nature. So I'm not the one to go pick up a mystery novel, even though I like suspense, but I'm truly a data geek because I always read about it.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm the same, clearly, with the Data Book Club. You mentioned competing on analytics, and that book actually came to mind earlier when we were talking about kind of finding a use case. And I think that book is so great at taking, because it's not about any particular tool, but it's about how do you use data and analytics to further your business. And so if people are struggling with that, that's a really great book for that. Just to inject my own personal opinion there, but
Yeah.
Also, Chris mentioned Joshua Burkow and your first initial response there. If folks are interested, episode 36 of the Data Ideas podcast actually featured an interview with Joshua Burkow. So you can learn more from Joshua there. But I know we've got one more rapid fire question for Chris.
Yeah. And that is, what are you working on right now? What project do you have?
So I have just started a project with the Oregon Department of Transportation and Jacobs Engineering. We are going to be analyzing, I've basically been tasked to create a data repository for all the ADA ramps that have been designed and created in the state of Oregon. And so we're going to be analyzing velocity on how quickly those ramps are being built. That'll be using some predictive analytics. We're doing some data blending because we have a multitude of data sources. And then we are doing some dashboarding and reporting for them. It's a pretty good long contract, and that's great. And that's been the focus of my time because it literally just started about a month and a half ago. And so that's been great. I feel like I can use a lot of visualizations there because they're very visually inclined with their data. I'm going to be using predictive analytics because we're going to be predicting how many ramps get done, whether it be settlement ramps or just other ramps. In this case, we'll also be creating reporting on crosswalk data. Also, that'll filter onto a side project, and then potentially another project dealing with crossroads, because all of those have ramps. You really think about it, the ramps are a certain degree, they have to be a certain angle. So we're tracking all that and who's building them. And so that's pretty cool. So that's fun. And then I also do some work for Sandia Casino, completely on the different end as far as data verticals are concerned. And that's where I'm still using Cognos, and that's also fun. Yeah, I kind of dally in a lot of different verticals of data. So, and we'll be willing to do more. That's one of the things that I just want to make sure we keep busy and keep sharp. So that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. I love both of those projects. Who would have thought? I mean, I guess it doesn't come to mind that you could analyze, the different types of ramps that might be within, that our physical world that we experience every day. So I think that's so cool. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris. It has been an absolute honor. Where can people learn more about you and follow and get more insights?
So obviously you can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Williams, and we can link that. Or do you want me to? I think we could broadcast it.
Dustin dropped it in the comments, but we will also link it in the show notes, right, Dustin?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
So follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on. I have a business page for Precision Analytics Group on LinkedIn as well. Follow me. I will post my blogs on my LinkedIn profile. So if you follow me, you'll be able to see that. If you need any sort of data help or any dashboarding or reporting or system analysis or system help, please feel free to reach out to me. My company would be more than happy to help you along. And if you want to partner with another company and want to just have some support work done, we're very interested in helping out with that. But I have a journey that we're going to be chronicling on LinkedIn and Twitter. So please follow me. If nothing else, I would love to just have another contemporary to work with and talk to. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Brandi and Dustin, for the time and the opportunity and the platform to kind of tell my story, at least some of it. And then, let's connect and see if I can tell more of it some other time. But I really am in awe of both of you. So thank you so very much. I'm really grateful and thankful.
Well, we thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And I would say to everybody listening, don't forget to rate the podcast. If you liked this conversation and want to hear us talk to more people, definitely rate the podcast, subscribe to it. And if you think somebody would benefit from Chris's wisdom today, share the episode as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.